The Woodface album begins with a track called Chocolate Cake. Was this song inspired from observations during his stays in America?
Well, it was inspired by Tim relating a story to me of him sitting in a little restaurant in New York and seeing a rather large woman consume a massive meal and then a big piece of chocolate cake. And then she turned to her husband and said, "I don't know, honey, shall I have another piece of chocolate cake or the check?" And it was just a little story, but it sparked off this song, and actually we wrote that in about 20 minutes. It was very fast, and we just threw in a whole lot of satirical lines about consumption and greed, and it came together very easily.
It's Only Natural was written by you and the newest member of Crowded House. Tell us a little about the song and what led to the inclusion of your new collaborator.
Well, it is a good title for that particular topic because Tim's inclusion in the band in the end came together very naturally. Although Crowded House had begun to record an entire album before we decided to include Tim, what happened was that these songs that Tim and I had written demanded to be done, and they started to be included on the Crowded House record, and pretty soon Tim was there, and pretty soon we were doing gigs with him, and it became very obvious to all of us that the album would be very strong with both Tim and these songs that he and I had written. And it would be far less schizophrenic than it was when we were planning 2 records last year, a duo record and a Crowded House record. When we were going to release them was becoming a nightmare. So it's been good for everybody.
You wrote Fall at Your Feet yourself. It has a beautiful melody and a particularly nice feel. Is this the kind of song where the music comes first, then a lyrical theme emerges?
No. Well, some of it was like that. I can hardly remember how that song came together, actually. It was a convoluted one, that one. Mitchell Froome, our producer, suggested putting a verse and a chorus together for that song. We knew the chorus was really strong. We were lacking a good verse for it, and I happened to be jamming one day with the band in the studio, and we were playing an old piece of mine, which became the verse of that song. And Mitchell jumped on it and said, "That's it." And I finished the lyrics on the spot then, and we had it within about 2 hours. It had a good energy about it.
Tall Trees is a tougher rock and roll song. Is there a story behind the lyrics?
Yeah, Tall Trees was a song that actually part of was written about 8 to 10 years ago, and I found on a tape. And the lyric just deals with staying close to your roots, really, in a simple explanation.
One of the most unusual songs musically is Weather With You, where you play a jazz-style guitar. What gave you the idea to do the instrumental parts that way? And is there a place such as 57 Mount Pleasant Street?
I don't really think of it as being a jazz style, but it is an interesting blend of styles, this song. It just came from, again, Tim and I wrote this one at the same time as we wrote Chocolate Cake and It's Only Natural, and I think it was mostly his verse, his melody, and I wrote the lyrics for it. So 57 Mount Pleasant Street is a fictitious address as far as the number goes, but my sister used to live in a house in Mount Pleasant Street in Auckland, and that's what we were thinking of when we wrote the song. But it just was it was a good contrast to the theme of the song for it to be called Mount Pleasant Street, because really it was about a guy who's totally wrapped up in melancholia, standing in his lounge room feeling lost.
Common thread on this album is the strength and conviction of the singing. A good example is on Whispers and Moans, where you have to extend yourself vocally in parts. Did you have to spend a lot of time with singing on this song?
Well, there's some quite elaborate backing vocals on that song, which we spent time on. It's interesting enough that even the songs that Tim wasn't theoretically in the band for, he ended up doing backing vocals on almost all of them before we had incorporated him into the band. And that one's a good example. Tim sang backgrounds on the chorus for that. The vocal for that was not particularly difficult, but it's one of my favourite sounding tracks on the record. I think as far as the textures go on the record, we put a lot of interesting sounds into it, and as an arrangement I'm very pleased with it.
The instrumental backing on 4 Seasons in One Day is minimal, with your vocal right up front. Why did you feel the song warranted that kind of interpretation, and was it a little intimidating having to carry the song as you pretty much do on this one?
Oh, not really, no. Well, it was always a very intimate song, Four Seasons in One Day, and Tim and I actually wrote that at the same time as the others, and we did a demo which was very stripped down. We became attached to that, and we wanted it to be as close as possible. I like the idea of a song where the vocal's sitting right next to your ear and is very dry and there's very little else to distract you. So we left that one alone.
There Goes God shows another different side to Crowded House, especially with the harmonica.
Well, it wasn't actually our initial idea to put harmonica on the song at all, but Chris Wilson heard us playing that at ID's nightclub down in Paran, as it used to be, before the council shut it down. And he was very attached to the song, and he said, let me have a play on it when you come to record it. And so we got him up, and he crouched down before we were about to start playing the song and looked completely lost in some private thoughts. And then the song started, and he stood up and raised his arm into the heavens and played one take, and we kept the entire take. And we asked him, what were you doing, Chris? You look pretty flamboyant, pretty dramatic. And he said, I was just pretending I was God.
Fame Is has an intriguing, if rather obscure lyric. Who are the handmaidens of end time?
Well, they are actually, I was told about this order of religious people in the Middle East somewhere called the handmaidens of end time, and it actually struck a chord. But I actually apply it in this song really to the New Ages, particularly the Californian variety, who under the pretense of being on a quest for sort of spiritual enlightenment, are really just trying to be successful and become famous,
All I Ask has a string arrangement that's a bit unusual for Crowded House, isn't it?
It is. Well, it's unusual because we've never really had the time or the money available to do it properly. And with this song, All I Ask, we knew there was a certain amount of drama inherent in it, and we wanted to really capture that as best as possible. And the idea came up for a string arrangement. We happened to be in Los Angeles, and we found a very good arranger, and we were able to get an incredibly good 22-piece string section in. So it was just pure delight, really, for us. I was able to sit in the studio and hear a really good string section playing something that I'd written, or that Tim and I had written together, and it was that knocked us out. We all wore suits, and they all wore leisure wear. So there was something slightly wrong there, but the music sounded good.
On the song As Sure As I Am, you use David Hidalgo from Los Lobos playing some very subtle accordion. How did David happen to be on this track, and is the song as political as it seems to be?
Political? Well, I don't think of it as being political, but it's definitely takes a tongue-in-cheek jab at apathy and indifference, yeah. And if that comes through, that's good, because it isn't always completely clear. But David Hidalgo was known to us through his work with Mitchell mostly. Los Lobos have worked with Mitchell Froome, our producer, and Mitchell suggested him when the idea came up for accordion, and he came down and actually found it quite difficult because it's not an easy song, there's lots of chords, but he ended up playing beautifully on it, so it was really, really great to have him. He's a great accordion player, and he's got a fantastic voice too.
The odd song out on the album is Italian Plastic, because it's written by Paul Hester. What appealed to you so much about this song that you could find place for it on Woodface?
Well, it always it struck me straight away when Paul first played it to me, this song, not just because it's got a very strong chorus, but the sentiment involved is I find really appealing. It's a Baroque love song, as he calls it. Not particularly Italian, but he once bought some really tacky Italian souvenirs for his girlfriend and brought them home, and she found them quite pathetic, I think. So that kind of inspired the song.
She Goes On has a beautiful lyric and melody. Who is the song about?
Well, I don't want to go into it too deeply, but it was actually written after the death of a close friend, and it was written at the request of somebody. So I didn't intend it to necessarily be on a Crowded House record, but I was a song that wore very well, and I thought, well, this is as good as anything else I've written on the record, so it has to go on, really. But I mean, a lot of people think it's a love song, which is great, because I really wanted it to be the most positive song you could write about something ultimately very black.
The last song on the album is How Will You Go, written by you and Tim. Was singing harmonies with your brother like you do on this song one of the highlights of recording the new album?
It was. We did all the vocals that we did that were two-part harmonies, did them all together, 5 or 6 of them on one day, and we recorded in Tim's lounge room. A good 2/3 of the record was recorded in his house in Caulfield. He put a 24-track studio in there, and we just sort of busked our way for a couple of months down home, so to speak, getting sandwiches from up the road, from Bupi, our our local sandwich maker, and it was all very intimate and very enjoyable and low key. But singing with Tim, yes, it was an extreme pleasure, and the most pleasurable aspect of it was that really in Split Ends we never exploited the two-part harmony thing as much as we should have, and we feel with this record we've really pulled something out which we haven't really done since we were boys together and we were performing for our parents' friends, you know.
Neil Finn, thank you for talking to us about your Woodface album, and congratulations on another great batch of Crowded House songs.
Thanks very much. We'll be seeing plenty of you.